IELTS writing, in my opinion, is possibly the hardest, but sometimes I think reading might be harder. Technically speaking, IELTS writing should be much easier compared to reading, just simply because there are many possible answers you can give. There are a lot of personal opinions, experiences, and examples that can come off from the top of your head, whereas in reading, the answer is fixed. There's only one correct answer. But regardless, whether, technically speaking, IELTS is easier or harder, in reality, in practice, I think IELTS writing gets the lowest score on average among all the other subtests. Or let's just say it's capped. When I say capped, I haven't really seen anyone get an 8.0 in IELTS writing. Not really. An 8.0 in IELTS writing is astronomical. You are like the unicorn of IELTS test takers. You're a one in a lifetime or one in a 10-year. I don't see 8.0s in IELTS writing. I see it in reading. In listening, I've seen 9.0 in reading, in fact. I've never seen a 9.0 in IELTS writing, and I'm going to explain why I think that's the case. As I'm sure most of you know, writing in itself is hard. Yes, grammar, words, vocabulary, whatever. But the main reason I think it's so difficult, especially in the IELTS exam, is because it's subjective. It's opinionated. It's not fact-based. It's not answer key-based. Now, in IELTS listening and reading, there's an answer key. So if your answers match the answer key, then you definitely deserve to pass. Otherwise, if none of your answers match the answer key, then you won't have any reason to pass at all. It's a failed score. That for me is objective. There's an objective, factual basis for passing and failing the reading and listening test. That's not the case in speaking and writing, though. Take note, there is no answer key for these two tests. Luckily, at least in terms of the skills, I think speaking is much easier than writing just because we talk a lot more than we write. I don't know if there's anyone out there who's some sort of hermit who's written more than they actually talk. If there are, then I imagine they would be wonderful writers. Not necessarily great speakers, though. So it's a skill. It's practice. If you talk more than you write, then naturally you'll become a great speaker. But if you write more than you talk, then naturally you'll become a great writer. You could be both, definitely. But I think that's just one factor. Again, the main factor, the main reason why I believe IELTS writing is so hard is because of something I like to call the examiner factor. So what is that? What's the examiner factor? Simple. Just like in speaking also, if the examiner likes your response or your essay, then you can get a very good score. But if your examiner did not like your essay or your response, then you get a very low score. That's simply it. That's all the examiner factor means. Is it objective? Hell no. There's so many ways a person could dislike a certain piece of writing. It could even be just based on handwriting, and you already fail just because the examiner didn't like your handwriting. Another case would be the examiner is just very lenient. Maybe the examiner has a soft spot for people, and so he's going to pass any essay he sees. But that's not the case, definitely, for most. Some of you might be thinking, but sir, IELTS is an objective, standardized exam. The scores should be fair and correct. And yeah, I agree, they should. But they're not. Proof of this is how there are rechecking or reassessment services. IELTS isn't a standard 100% objective test. IDP, British Council know this for a fact, and that's why they provide reassessment or rechecking services, where If you don't like the score you got, especially in writing, then you're welcome to have it rechecked or reassessed by a more veteran or experienced examiner. You will be paying a fee for it though, but if the score does change upon reassessment, then they return the money to you. So that in itself for me is evidence that they know IELTS writing isn't 100% objective. It is biased, it is subjective, its scores vary from examiner to examiner. Even the way examiners check, I believe, will vary. This is true not just for examiners, but even for IELTS coaches. I myself, I have a very different way of checking and grading compared to other examiners and other coaches. And that's fine. That's the reality. There's not much you can do about it unless you have an answer key for the writing test, which I don't think is possible with our current setup. But anyway, so what can we do? What is the way to pass an extremely subjective test that isn't going to be based on facts or hard evidence? What can we do about that? Are we just going to try our luck and take again and again and again until we finally pass? To be honest, that is one way. That's how a lot of students tend to go about it. If they don't get the band score they need in writing, they'll just take the test again, then pray to God that they get a fair examiner and pass the exam that way. The other method that I feel would work out is try to be ahead of the competition. What do I mean by that? When you take your exam, you'll be taking it with a group of other test takers. There could be 20, 40, or even 100 of you in the room. Your job is to stand out. Your job is to be the best of the best in that very specific room or test area. Easier said than done, I know, especially if you're in an area or region where everyone just happens to be great at English. I think any test center that is near a school or university is going to be a very competitive place in terms of scoring. Students tend to take the test seriously from an academic standpoint, and they have been trained to write essays throughout their schooling career. Sadly, that's not the case for many working professionals. I mean, I myself, I've never had to write a whole essay in my job. I've had to check a lot, though. I had to check a lot of essays. But anyway, the trick is look for a place where everyone's English is bad. I strongly believe that the examiner factor is, yes, unfair, but this could work for you. If everyone else's English or handwriting or grammar is horrible and you have the best handwriting or grammar of them all, then the chances of you passing is pretty high. I think this works in provincial areas, especially in areas where it's remote. When I say remote, I mean there's not so many people. Probably you could count more goats and sheep than actual living people. If you find an area like that, take the test there, please. Do not take the test in cities. I mean, if you have no choice, fine. But just understand that in urban areas, the competition is tough. There's bound to be someone better than you in writing or in handwriting or in grammar. And that's normal. That's how it is at work also. But if you can find an area, an environment where you will stand out and be the best of the best, that will significantly improve your chances. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of rumors that go around between you and other people who have taken the test. Maybe there are groups out there who talk about certain examiners who are strict and difficult to pass, or certain IDP or British Council branches that seem to have a higher passing rate than others. Those are again factors that you can take advantage of. I also believe it has to do with timing. If you're going to take the IELTS exam during a season when everyone else is also taking the exam, then competition is going to be tough. Tendency is your essay will be compared to many other essays or test takers. So if you could take it during a time when no one wants to take the exam, that would improve your chances. I'm thinking of Christmas and New Year. Who wants to take a test during the holidays? If you're the only one taking the test in that exam area, then chances are you'll pass. That's how it works for IELTS writing, at least.